Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Part number 30, where are we at? 37 of the build tutorial. We have the wood graining technique done in the back. We also have the bare metal foil finished up. And I'll go ahead and hold this up here and show you how all of that came out. We did one strip on video, and then I went ahead and did the rest of them since it's the same procedure off camera. So that's where we're at right now. The next step we're going to do is go in and create some shadows around that, give it a little bit of depth. And what we're going to be using is the Vallejo Model Wash. This is number 515. It is a light gray, but it's actually, I think at one point in time, I did put a little bit of black in this. So it actually darkened it up a little bit. And I use these bottles a lot of times for my homemade, washes that I do. So all we're going to do with this is we're going to drop some over here on the on this scrap piece of plastic. And you don't need a whole lot to do this because you're not going to put much on. So we're just going to drop a little bit over there. And of course, I have a cup of water over here. And I'm going to take a wider brush and I'm going to add just a little bit more water to this piece of plastic, just to thin this out a little bit more. Make it flow just a little bit better for us. Like I say, we don't want this to be too stark, so the more that you thin it out, the less stark it's going to be. And to create a nice shadow and not be too bold and kind of look fabricated. So we're going to be using a small brush. This is a, what have I got here? This is a 10-0 brush, which you've heard me say that a lot. I'm using a 10-0 brush. We're just going to mix that around a little bit in the water and get it to blend in real good. Now we're doing what they call a pen wash now. This is where you're going to be very careful on where you're putting the actual paint down on the surface. So what we want to do is we just want to come in and we're going to go right up against the side of like our bare metal foil. And we're just going to pull that around the edges. And it'll flow. And then we're going to drag a little bit across the surface just to kind of darken things a little bit. And like I say, create that shadow. Now, the majority of what goes down through the center will be coming back up. Or we'll actually be moving it to the edges. So you're not really changing the color of the wood grain as much as you're just putting a shadow down around the raised portions at the ribs and at where the side panels meet the wood. You're just creating a shadow. And you can also go in with something like this on the bare metal foil if you want to. You can actually come in and you can drag a little bit of this down through the bare metal foil ribs. And what that will do is it will pull a little bit of color toward the fasteners and create a little bit of an edge on them, and it'll actually make them pop out a little bit. So that's another little trick that you can do. And we'll hold this up here closer as we move along in this process. But like I say, all we're doing is just trying to create a little shadow around the raised edges. And this will be a little stark when you first put it on. Depending on how thin you have made it, it will, tone itself down a lot if you don't make it too thick. If you make it too thick, it's not going to tone itself down. And really, on this part, that's something you don't want. You want to make sure that when you put it on, it tones itself down and it looks very subtle when you're done. And this will also highlight the wood grain a little bit. Now, the one thing that I didn't mention about this particular model that we're working on, these panels down in here are actually cast with a wood grain texture in them. So if we were trying to make the texture, it would be a little bit different process compared to a kit that already has a texture in it. But in this case, we do have texture down here that AMT gave us straight out of the kit. They did a very nice wood graining texture on everything. And all we're doing is going in and enhancing what they gave us to work with straight out of the kit. So now I'm going in and putting a little bit down on these bare metal foil sections here. And like I say, when you first put it on, you may think that it's a little, a little too bold, a little too stark. But as this dries out, it will blend in and look very, very nice. And this is all water-based stuff. As you can see, I just mixed plain old water in it. This is one of more of my homemade contraptions here, washes that I do. Now, the question came up about the Tamiya panel liner. I do not recommend a Tamiya panel liner in something like this because it is an enamel product. And the other thing is it's not really made to do an overall wash like this. You could, but the thing is you're going to have to take enamel thinner to get the excess back off. And that's where you're going to run into an issue with these acrylics. Because the enamel thinner is going to be a little bit too aggressive and it's going to lift your acrylics up and ruin everything that you have down here. So that's the reason why I said not to use the regular Tamiya panel line adhesive or accent color on this particular part. I like to stay with the water-based stuff on this. If you make a mistake or whatever, you can take a wet and Q-tip most times and take it right off. No big deal. But if you start introducing enamels and stuff like that into the picture and you have to take some off, the only way you're getting them back off is with enamel thinner, and that can be a whole world of trouble. So try not to do that. Try not to mix those enamels in on this coat or on this step of the procedure. Like, some people will wood grain with enamels, and that's perfectly fine. They make clears and everything in enamels just like they do in the acrylics. The reason why I don't use the enamels is they take too long to dry. It's not something that you can continue the process like you can with the acrylics. You have to spray down the base color, and it might be tomorrow before I can go back and do something else to it. And that's just not my cup of tea. I don't like building like that. I don't like sitting around watching paint dry. I like to keep moving forward on my builds as much as I can. And, it keeps my interest up. It keeps me on my toes as far as, moving on to the next step and getting the procedures right. And with enamels, I just have a hard time doing that. I do use enamels, but not a lot. Okay, now we're pretty much all the way around everything, and we're a little bit starker over here, but you can see where it's drying out on this side over here. We're nowhere near as dark as it is in this area. So we're looking real good with that. It's giving us a nice raised a shadow around the raised areas, which is what we were looking for. And I'm cleaning out the brush now. And as far as the wood graining tutorial, that pretty much finishes it up. I'm going to hold it up here and show you how it came out. And remember, like I say, on this one side, it's going to be a little starker because it hasn't dried yet. But we're going to go ahead and get it on this cloth here, and we'll hold it up and let you get a view of what it looks like. And if you look at here where we started, you can see that it's starting to really thin out. And over here, it's real stark. When it dries, it'll go back to what's over here. So we're looking real good, real happy with that so far. And like I say, none of this is going to be seen when the model's put together. It was just a nice flat area to be able to show the wood graining technique. And, when I get to the body, it'll be the same basic procedure. A couple of changes here and there, but nothing major. We will do that on camera, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions at all about the wood graining technique on how I do it or need any tips or tricks or whatever, leave me a comment, let me know, and we'll address it in an upcoming episode. So that's all we have for now on this part. We'll be coming back here very soon, and we're going to start doing the flocking on the actual floor pan. Show you some tricks to that and the procedures that I use to do flocking. And we'll move on from there. So that's all we've got for this one. Like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.